My name is Mary Mosinghi, and I'm a grants manager at the Henry Smith Charity, and I also manage the Strengthening Communities program. Prior to joining Henry Smith, I also worked in the voluntary sector and took on various roles in the sector, and my last role was as a CEO of a small to medium-sized organization. So for the next 20 minutes, I'll give you an overview of the Strengthening Communities program, give you examples, share with you examples of organizations we currently fund under the program, some of the reasons why applications are declined, especially at stage 1, because we have a 2-stage process, responses to a survey we held last year and focus group discussions we held this year with our grant holders, give you an outline of the application process, and then open up the floor for a Q&A session to just take your questions and see if we can get through them. So Andy, I'm happy to start the presentation unless you think we should give others some more time to join.
No, I think we're about there now, Mary, with numbers. So I'll go ahead and load it up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me see if I can get rid of this. Right, so the Strengthening Communities Grant Program aims to support small grassroots organizations. This is an activity-focused program, and it aims to support small grassroots organizations with an annual turnover of £20,000 to £500,000 embedded in the community and working in the most deprived areas of the UK. This is a running costs grant, so organizations can apply for up to £60,000, £180,000 over three years. Through this grant program, we want to make sure that our funding reaches organizations that provide services which are widely accessible to the whole community and would respond to and address the needs of the people living in it. We want to support organizations that work to address the local needs within their communities. The ones that enables people from across the community to participate in activities which improve connectedness, opportunities, and well-being. By connectedness in the community, this is where staff, volunteers, and board members are local, and they work with local people to address the issues that matter to them. Do they live local? Are they involved in local community life? Their work should aim to increase confidence and aspirations of individuals to enable them access jobs, services, training, and education. We also want to fund work that enables people who are excluded, vulnerable, or facing other forms of hardship to have access to community-based services that support positive, lasting change, and work that enables a stronger, active, more engaged community. This grant is intended to be as flexible and helpful as possible to the organizations we're supporting. So we will provide running costs, which may include rent, overheads, salaries, as well as small capital costs needed to support the work. We advise organizations to apply for the amount of funding that they need that is proportionate to their financial position. And we would not fund more than 50% of the projected running costs of an organization per year. We fund established organizations with a track record of delivering services directly to beneficiaries. Organizations must be at least 18 months old and have published their first set of annual accounts. Like I've said, this is a program that is focused on geographic communities. We want to fund organizations providing a range of services supporting people living in their community. However, we also recognize that there's a wider definition of community beyond geographical area. Communities brought together by faith, race or ethnicity, age, gender, or sexual orientation, and who share social ties, common perspectives, and engage in community activities and care for each other. So if your work supports a more focused community or a community of interest, for example, children and young people, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities, women, LGBTI communities, you are eligible, you can apply as long as you meet the key criteria for the Strengthening Communities program. Since the grant started in 2018, we now have about 100 grant holders on the program. Next slide, please. This is one of our key criteria, the location criteria. Eligible organizations have to be both physically based and working within or immediately next to an area within the 10% most deprived areas in England and Scotland, and the 15% most deprived areas in Northern Ireland and Wales. We use the government indices of multiple deprivation for each country to establish eligibility. So before an organization applies for a grant, they must use the deprivation link provided on our website for each country. You can access the link within our Strengthening Communities funding guidelines, which you'd have to download from the website to check whether you're eligible for this program. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of the organizations we fund under the program. Ingol and Tatterton is a community-based organization. They work through a hub and they provide services for socially isolated adults in Preston. Earlier, I did say that this is an activity-focused program. Here you can see the range of services or activities provided by this organization. They have welfare, debt, and financial advice, drop-in one-to-one support, work clubs, IT training, social and health activities, volunteering, community events. They have a food bank and a pantry. And our grant funded a center support and advice officer. As a response to the COVID-19 crisis, they distributed food parcels, they kept their pantry open, and they donated IT devices to the digitally excluded. One beneficiary did say that this is a brilliant community resource. The staff are wonderful. You're made to feel at home. So what is key here is they have this community center in the community where they deliver a range of services accessible to the whole community. So the community come in to access services. Next slide, please. This is a community of interest. Hideaway Youth Project provides support to disadvantaged young people in Moorside in Manchester. So they mainly work with young people. Again, look at the range of services. They have drop-in sessions, advice and information sessions, outreach and detached youth work, sports activities, dance classes, basketball training, youth club, homework support, access to computers. And I visited this organization when they were going through the second stage of the assessment. And it was lovely. It was nice to just see young people coming in to cook their lunch, to meet staff members, to check on each other, to offer each other's peer support. And it was an active community hub, which was, really inspiring. So our grant funded the evening sessional youth work and weekend provision of activities. And as a response to the COVID-19 response, they delivered online activities, also donated IT devices to the digitally excluded. But when organizations are outlining the activities they provide or the services they provide, Normally, they'll give us the hours, the frequency, and the numbers attending each activity. So that's important to bear in mind as well. Next slide, please. These are some of the reasons why applications are declined. We have a two-stage process. Stage one, we do a desk review of online applications. Stage two, applicants provide more detailed information. One of our volunteer visitors or a staff member visits applicants, and the grant manager reviews the visit report. Applicants are informed within 8 weeks if they've been declined or can progress to stage two, and stage one to stage two takes about 6 months. To award of a grant takes about 6 months. One of the reasons why applications are declined is that the organization is not in a deprived area. In 2020, 1 in 3 applicants were ineligible because the organization's premises were outside the most deprived areas. We carried out a review of the program this year. We're now a bit more flexible with this criteria, and we're saying if your premises are not within the area, you should be immediately next to the area. So you could be across the road or at the bottom of the road. But if you're a mile away, you wouldn't qualify, because what we're looking at is those organizations that are embedded in the community, their staff, their volunteers, their board members are local, and they're delivering a range of services in the community. We're still seeing lots of applications coming in whereby organizations maybe have their premises in a city center and do outreach into various communities. An organization wouldn't qualify in that instance. Others are spread across geographical communities, so they're not really within one particular geographical location. Again, they wouldn't be eligible for the program. Another one was that the application was not a good fit. The 3 main causes were that work was not localized to a particular community, again, spread across geographical areas, work limited to too narrow a range of services. Examples of the 2 organizations I gave, they had a range of services. We've had applications where an organization is offering only counseling services or ESOL classes or sports for young people, just only sports for young people. Again, it's too limited and narrow of range of services, thus you wouldn't be eligible. And the other reason why it's not a good fit is that the work is too focused on a particular group. You're working with a community of interest, you work with young people, but only girls, you wouldn't qualify. You work with refugees and asylum seekers, but only women refugees, you wouldn't qualify. So if the work is too focused on a particular group, you wouldn't be eligible. And lack of information on services to be delivered. The detail we'd expect around the services to be delivered lacks depth and breadth. So those are the key 3 reasons why applications are declined at stage 1. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, last year we carried out a survey of our grant holders to find out their responses to the coronavirus. And they mainly responded well to the pandemic. Many changed and modified their services, often very quickly. They were all good at identifying local needs and changing circumstances and increasing their responsiveness. They reported that they were filling frontline gaps left by statutory services. They felt that they were firefighting for frontline services, and in most times they were the immediate responders to situations normally covered by statutory services. They expanded their partnership working, leading to new opportunities and greater impact. They all reported a loss of earned income due to closed premises. One organization had to cancel 18 weddings, which led to a total loss of about £200,000. And they all experienced the constant uncertainty around the ever-changing coronavirus restrictions that made planning extremely challenging. They found that it was unclear about when and how they could reopen premises. Next slide, please. Early this year, we conducted 3 online focus group discussions with 6 to 8 participants per group with our grant holders. We wanted our grant holders to agree what they had in common regarding how they deliver services and associated challenges, the impacts of the Strengthening Communities grants, and the experiences of the Strengthening Communities grant-making process. Next slide, please. In a nutshell, this is how the organizations funded under the Strengthening Communities program describe themselves. They are user-led, responsive, passionate organizations whose service model is generally building-based, providing safe, welcoming spaces for face-to-face work with individuals and groups from all sections of the community. They refer to themselves as community hubs, not community centers, a model in which partnership working maximizes limited resources and volunteers are instrumental. They felt that their key objectives included tackling mental health issues, social isolation, financial and benefits exclusion, and connecting people to promote community cohesion. Next slide, please. We asked them about any service delivery and challenges they had experienced. Again, the responses were quite similar from the responses we had from the surveys we held. They all felt that they were filling frontline gaps left by statutory services. They felt that support had been non-existent for a lot of families with social and mental health workers and health visitors working from home. And most of them noted that this was a long-term trend. They felt that they increased their responsiveness. They consulted with communities, they repositioned themselves to deliver new and emerging services, such as food and essential distribution. They found new ways of working, for example, doorstep checks and debt advice, and also expanded their outreach. They all reported loss of earned income due to closed premises. They reported a greater awareness of ICT skills shortages and exclusion, in particular young people lacking phone credit, older people lacking digital skills, as well as their own original digital shortages, and also the constant uncertainty around the ever-changing COVID-19 restrictions that made planning extremely challenging. Next slide, please. We asked them about the impacts of our grant, the Strengthening Communities grant. They all found the core cost funding flexible and that it enabled rapid service development and expansion. One grant holder told us that it gives us the flexibility to go and meet the needs of the community rather than just focus on a particular project. So more generally, grant holders described increasing the range and scope of services driven by the community needs rather than funding requirements. They felt that the core costs funding facilitated capacity building. There was strong consensus that reducing funding pressures made space for developing policies, processes, and upgrading systems and skills. For example, safeguarding policies, ICT processes, and marketing skills. The core course funding gave them that, enabled them to carry out for capacity building. The grant generated further funding. There was a consensus that having a co-funder was actually a catalyst for other funders to support organizations. It had that positive reassuring effect. They all felt that they were supporting more individuals and that their numbers doubled since they got the grant, and they've extended their outreach further during the crisis. And that the grant increased community awareness and cohesion. There was strong consensus that by enabling charities to offer more and better support, particularly since the pandemic, strengthening communities has created a virtuous circle of raised awareness. People realize the work the community organizations do. They proved that they're more than a place to stop for a coffee. More people are realizing the importance of communities. More people are aware that hard times can fall upon anybody, and we're all here to support each other. Next slide, please. So this is an outline of how you can apply for the Strengthening Communities, for a Strengthening Communities grant. The applications are online. You can apply anytime, and there are no deadlines. In order to apply, you'd have to download the Strengthening Communities funding guidelines from the Henry Smith Charity website. You need to use the links in the guidelines to check your postcode using the indices of multiple deprivation links in the funding guidelines. You'll need to complete the eligibility quiz to confirm you meet our criteria. And you make and then if you meet the eligibility criteria, you'll be given a number and you can make an application using our online application form. Next slide, please. So before I open up for questions, in summary, the key details of this grant is that it's an activities-focused program providing a range of services for the whole community. Organizations should be able to demonstrate that they are providing a range of services for the whole community. The grant size is between 20,000 to 60,000. It's a running course grant. The length of the grant is normally up to 3 years. Decision time, when you go through to stage 2, is 6 months, and there are no deadlines. The key qualifying criteria is the organization size needs to be between 20,000 and 500,000 pounds. Some organizations have seen their turnover tipped above 500,000 pounds because of COVID grants. If you're one of them, do give us a call and we can have discussions around that. Another key qualifying criteria is the location of your work. You need to be both physically based and working within or immediately next to an area within the 10% most deprived in England and Scotland and 15% most deprived in Northern Ireland and Wales. It's a running course grant, and the organization type can be community-led charities and not-for-profit organizations. So thank you very much, Auntie, and we can now open up for questions.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please do use the chat function or do use the raise your hand icon, the button that should be at the bottom of your screen. If you want to ask one verbally, that's absolutely fine. Just to kick things off, I do have a couple that were sent ahead, Mary, that I can get the ball rolling with, if that's okay. So one of them was, how do you pay your grants? Is it an upfront payment or when you receive invoices for work and then it via installments?
It's an upfront payment and 2 payments every year. The fast pay, we give you the fast payment as soon as you're awarded a grant, a month after you're awarded a grant, as long as you meet the terms and conditions of the grant. And then again, 6 months later, we expect you to produce a progress report on a yearly basis. And once the progress report is signed off, you get your next installment of the grant. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've just had a question come in from Emma. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm happy to read it out. It says, so Emma thanks you for a great presentation, and she's just wondering, is there any limit on reserves for an organisation applying to Henry Smith?
I think looking at your financial position as well, if let's say your income is 50,000 and your reserves are really high, I think you'd have to explain why you have such high levels of reserves, but really we don't normally have limits on reserves now.
Okay, excellent. So I'll wait to see if anyone else has any other questions that comes up. I've got another one here. What is the average size grant that you make, and are you more likely to be successful if you ask for less funding?
The average grant size we make for the Henry Strengthening Communities program is about £20,000. Like I said, we don't fund more than 50% of your projected running costs for each year. You need to apply for the amount of funding you need. And we don't look at, as long as it's in line with your financial position as an organization, we wouldn't really determine what we feel an organization can apply for, as long as it's not more than 50% of your projected running costs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mary. There's a few more coming through, so I'll just go back to them. So Britta asks, would children with special needs be considered to be a distinct community?
Too narrow a focus, because they are children, but they're not all children in the community. It's children with special needs. So in this case, the organization wouldn't qualify for the Strengthening Communities program. What I'd advise is for Britta to go onto our website and read the guidelines on the Improving Lives program that is more open to other priority areas and priority groups. The average size for that organization turnover is 50,000 to 3 million. And the grant size is also up to £60,000 a year, 180,000 over 3 years. And it's an outcomes focused program. So you need to read, download the Improving Lives guidelines and find out more about that. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a question here from Yvonne. She says that her charity is below the turnover criteria for a grant. Could they combine with another local charity of similar size that also works with the same community to work in partnership and apply for a joint grant?
No, we wouldn't consider a joint grant. We consider a grant from one organization delivering services from the premises within that community and working in partnership with other communities who come in and deliver services as well, but they're not subcontracting those communities. So no, we wouldn't.
Okay. Question from Nick. Does the top 10% IMD eligibility criteria apply to other Henry Smith charity programs too?
No, it only applies to the Strengthening Communities Grants program.
Okay, a question from Helen. Can you apply to more than one type of grant from Henry Smith? For example, Strengthening Communities and Improving Lives.
You can only have one grant at any one time. So for example, if you're awarded a Strengthening Communities grant, you can't really apply for a Improving Lives grant. These are the two main programs. If you apply for both at the same time, if one of them is assessed before the other won't be looked at because it's one grant one grant per organization at any one time. So I think it's best to read the guidelines. If you feel you qualify under strengthening communities, apply for that. If you don't, apply for improving lives. And if you don't qualify under strengthening communities, definitely try and look into improving lives and see whether your work fits within any one of our 6 priority areas and submit your application. In addition, if you need further information on improving lives or strengthening communities, at the end of this session, I'm going to send out a PDF version of my presentation, or you already have it handy. And within that PDF version, there's a phone number and an email. Organizations can call in and ask about improving lives or any further information they need around strengthening communities. And anybody can pick up the phone and answer your questions. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. So another question. If you have applied before and the outcome was unsuccessful, how soon are you able to reapply?
You'd have to wait for up to a year. You can't apply within a year. I'd also suggest that if you're unsuccessful, give us a call and get detailed feedback, because the feedback we give you will inform your next application, where we feel your weaknesses were in your application or your shortcomings. I know a year is too long, so give us a call, get the feedback, start thinking about what you could improve on and what changes you may need to make in your application. And towards the end of the year, when you're ready to submit, if you feel you still want to tease out a few things, give us a call back. We're here to help, we're here to support, and we'll answer any technical questions you may have, not so much on what's in your application or reading it for you, but any technical questions you may have. Yeah. Okay.
There's no more questions that have come through at the moment, but I do have another one, and I don't know if you've covered this yet. Would it be helpful for organisations to provide additional information with their application, such as business plans?
There's a question within the application form that asks about your fundraising plan. And organizations give us an outline of the current applications they have, outstanding applications, and also funders they're looking at applying to. Some of them tell us about the challenges they've had around fundraising. Quite a number have had a knock-on effect, have had the impact of COVID has had on their funding. Some have got more money, some have got less money. So there's that discussion. If we feel that an organization hasn't given us enough information about their finances and they go through to stage 2, when we visit, we'll ask you for additional questions regarding your finances and your fundraising plan. We may also ask you for your fundraising plan to send us a copy of that, especially if we feel that you may need developmental support around your fundraising plan and you'll be monitored against it. But at stage 1, what we're really looking at is what you put in that application around your finances. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. That's really clear. So kind of another point that we've got another question. If people do meet the criteria that's set, are there any other kind of common mistakes that would see their application rejected?
The challenge I'm having at the moment is people are still not meeting, they're still falling short of the criteria. We're having applications where organizations are not best within the center, within the geographic community, neither are they immediately next to the geographical community. They may be a mile away, or their premises are in a city and they're doing outreach work. Some are working from a park, but that's not really your premises, that's a park. Some are working from home. Again, how many members of the community are going to come into your home to access those services? So there's shortcomings when it comes to the location criteria. People need to be very clear about that and go and read the funding guidelines, really have a detailed look at them. Another issue we have is the services. Like I mentioned earlier, the services are very brief. It could be just one or two. You're providing services for a whole community, whether it's the geographical communities or communities of interest, but we want to see a range of services, not just one or two. And sometimes there's no detail at all about the services. It's just football, sports, cooking, but then so what? What about that? So there's that lack in detail. Some of the shortfalls as well is when we ask organizations to tell us about the needs of the local community, there's not much data to support the need, and the services are not well described. For example, the challenges the community is facing, the demographics of the community. So those are the kind of things that are lacking. The applications have guidelines for each question. I would advise that you read that guideline and answer that question to the best of your, as best as you can, really. Yeah. But I'm still, I mean, this is about the 15th presentation I've done. And when I look at the cold spots where we're doing these presentations and the applications are coming in, there's still lots of shortfalls. So I think people are still not reading and understanding the criteria and ensuring that they answer those questions as clearly as possible.
So would you value people contacting you prior to submitting an application to really discuss this?
Unless they have a question they don't understand, because it's all there, it's all well laid out in the application. But if there's a technical question you need clarity around, by all means do. Yeah, we're here to help. By all means do. Yeah.
Okay, so just, I think there's no more questions coming through. So just to remind everybody, if you do have a question for Mary, do let us know in the next few minutes. I've got, I think, one more on here. So I'll give everybody an opportunity to write a question, but I know you mentioned a couple of projects in your presentation, Mary, but are there any recent ones that you could let everybody know about that you've recently supported?
I'll give you an example of one we did support. This organization works with young people. They have a premises in a deprived area. They have a community playground where lots of young people come and access services. We're very clear that you should be providing a range of services for the community you serve. They applied for work with disabled young people. And that's all they talked about. Much as they did mention that we work with all young people, but the focus was on disabled young people. They weren't eligible. I had one where they worked with refugees and asylum seekers. They have their premises in the deprived area. Lots of their beneficiaries live in that area, so they all come in to access services. They provide a range of services for that community of interest, and they were successful. Another organization has two premises actually. This one was quite interesting. It's a luxury to have two premises in one community, in one geographic community. So they have this big premises, this community center, where they provide a range of activities or services, but they have a new satellite site that focuses on just services for young people. That doesn't mean they don't provide services for the whole community. They do. It's just that they have this satellite space for young people still within the community. And I think for me, at visit, because we're going out to visit this organization, I'm going to visit them. I want them, because much as the focus was on a lot of the work they want to do with this community of interest, demonstrate that you're going to deliver services for this whole community, because you have 2 centers, you're providing services for the whole community. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. But we've had a few thank yous come through on the chat box. I don't know if you've seen that, Mary, but there's been a few thank yous for a very informative presentation.
Yeah, I've seen them, Andy, and I'd love to get these questions. If you can send me a copy of the questions in the chat room, because some of the feedback I've received, some of the questions, all the questions that have been asked, I'll share them with our senior managers, with our board as well, so that they are also aware of the kind of questions that are coming in from the community. But I'd also encourage anybody that thinks that they are eligible to apply. And if you want further information, you can call that number and ask for me, or send an email and leave me a message. I'll pick it up and give you a call, and we can have a conversation around your application. Yeah.
Excellent. That's really good. Thank you, Mary.